Batman Arkham Asylum. This game has an interesting story, at least when it comes to me, because as soon as I saw the first trailer, I immediately knew this game was gonna be, I mean, masterpiece. You wanna call it masterpiece? In when it comes to superhero games, this game is a masterpiece because this was the first one that really hit the big spot, the mainstream. Everybody was talking about this game. You will argue, yeah, there have been other previous good superhero games, like a couple Spider-Man games on PS1. It was Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, and then Spider-Man 2 on PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. But this one is way better than anything that came before. In everything. Graphics, of course, gameplay. Gameplay loop, not just gameplay. Gameplay loop. Atmosphere, story, writing. Anything you can think of that's important in a video game, this game does it better than anything that came before. That's why it was such a big deal, because it cemented also it did cement Batman as an important character, even more than he was already. Also thanks to the Nolan movies that were coming out in that period around the late 2000s, because The Dark Knight had actually come out 1 year before this game. That definitely did help its popularity as well. But yeah, I mean, this was all this preamble to say this was back when games were still good, back when you could expect a good game out of a big franchise or a big publisher like Warner Bros. This game was I want to say a breath of fresh air, because before the Batman Arkham Asylum, superhero games weren't taken very seriously, as far as I can remember. So it definitely did help in that regards as well. And the fact that this is a single player only game in an era where multiplayer was starting to become more and more prevalent, thanks to the 360 on live service, Xbox Live service, and of course the PS3 as well, just in a smaller measure. Yeah, this game was special for a number of reasons. A little bit also because of nostalgia, because back then I was younger, I had less worries. I mean, when this game came out, I was also in love. So yeah, so it's all a bunch of converging factors and casualities that makes me remember this game even more fondly. But I'm not the type of guy that is gonna get blinded by nostalgia, because if I do replay a game after years and I don't have as fun as I did have before, I'm gonna tell you, I'm not just gonna say, no, it's still good. I'm gonna tell you, no, I didn't enjoy this game as I did before, because it didn't age as good as people say. But no, this is not the case with this game. This game is still very enjoyable, still very playable. Now, we're gonna talk more about all the aspects of this game in detail. But this game, like the Arkham franchise, is good for everybody. Like, you can play it even if you're not a Batman fan, because it's a game that good. It's that good that transcends the genre that it belongs to. it's one of those games that you can play. Even if you hate superheroes, you can play it. You're probably gonna still enjoy it because it's a very solid single player action game. Action game with stealth elements. So let's get into what makes this game special. Now, before getting into the gist of the video, I just want to briefly discuss that what makes Arkham Asylum special, even though there have been 3 more games after this one. So one could say, well, this game is outdated by the other 3 games. No, I have to say that personally, this game still does a few things better than the sequels. Not when it comes to pure gameplay, because of course the sequels added, builded on top of the very solid gameplay that Asylum has. But what makes Asylum special is the experimental nature that it permeates the whole game in some aspects. Some little details here and there. For example, the section where you go into the visitor center and Joker entertains you every time you enter the visitor center. He talks to you with a new line of dialogue, and that's in when you enter the visitor center, the game switches to first person, and that's one thing that makes the game special. But not just that, the UI, all the interview tapes with the inmates, the art style of the drawings, like when you go into the menu to see all the bios of the characters, the art style they're drawn in, all these little things give Arkham Asylum its very own special identity that has never been replicated by the other games, in my opinion. It has been lost. The simplicity of Arkham Asylum has been lost. And Asylum also has on its side the fact that at times the game almost feels like an horror game. Due to some creepy aspects of the villains and the storyline. And this feeling was definitely lost in the sequels. Absolutely. I don't know if you have played Medieval, but sometimes when you're roaming on Arkham Island, especially when you go in the part where you walk in the part of the island where there's the cemetery, coupled with the soundtrack the game has, it almost feels like I'm playing Medieval. Like, it gives me those kind of gothic vibes that have been lost when it comes to the sequels. So this is, in my opinion, what still makes this game relevant and very special. Now, let's talk about the story. Even if you're not familiar with Batman, I mean, I'm pretty sure you already know what Batman is about. He's a superhero, so he kicks criminals' ass. No, I'm not gonna explain everything, of course, but it's Batman. So the story of this game in particular takes place all inside Arkham Asylum, on Arkham Island specifically, the famous institution where all the super criminals are held when they are captured by Batman and arrested. It's of course a mental asylum, so it's full of crazies. And what makes the location interesting is that it's pretty much like a representation of hell, you can say. Arkham Asylum is hell on Earth, at least when it comes to the Batman universe, or at least when it comes to Batman himself, because it includes, it contains 90% of its rogue of his rogue gallery, you can say. Now, the version of Batman this game is inspired mostly by, in my opinion, is the animated series. And I mean, it's not a coincidence that most of the cast in Asylum is dubbed by the people who also dubbed the same characters in the Batman animated series from 1992. So one of the best animated series ever. And that definitely helps elevate the game because the acting is top notch. The actors really do a good job at conveying everything the character is going through. The writing is also pretty good. I mean, especially if you consider this is a video game, it's not a movie or an animated movie, it's a video game. So that also breaks the trend of superhero video games with maybe not so great writing. But yeah, this version of Batman is definitely the best, probably, when it comes to the video games, because I mean, there's not much. Also, there's not much competition when it comes to this. Before the game, but the 3D Batman games before this one were mostly mediocre. So there's really not much competition. Kevin Conroy does a very good job as Batman. And so do the other people of the cast. Now, the only thing I really don't enjoy when it comes to this game is the art style of the whole game, in the sense that how the 3D characters are modeled. And also a little bit of the graphics, but not really much. It's mostly because this game is done in a real engine 3, so the same engine that was used in Gears of War, for example. And sometimes it does seem like you're playing, I don't know, Gears of War, because the characters are all bulked up. Like, in that sense, I'm not a super fan of the artistic choices. Characters like Bane and Killer Croc, even though pretty intimidating, they seem like they've come out from Gears of War, and in my opinion, they are a bit jarring to see. But other than this, everything else is pretty good, because the graphics for the time were awesome. The sound design is also awesome. The soundtrack is very reminiscent of the other various Batman incarnations, which if you ever watch any, you know it's a good soundtrack. It's a good score. So in the aspect of the whole 3D art style, I've never been a fan of the Rocksteady games. I actually prefer how Arkham Origins did it, because the characters in that game feel more close to the design style that the Batman animated series had, compared to this one where they feel more like Gears of War character. Even Gordon is juiced up. So yeah, I don't know, but in that aspect, it's not definitely my favorite Batman incarnation or design. Even the Batman's batsuit is not really that good, in my opinion. It's simple, yes, which is good, but I don't like how it's rendered in the engine, and how it looks, especially with those long pointy ears. I prefer the ears a little bit shorter. When it comes to the story specifically for this game, it pretty much boils down to Joker preparing a big trap for Batman on Arkham Island, and letting loose all the criminals and the psychos that are on the island at the time the game takes place. of course, Joker included. So a lot of people will die, will get killed, and on. You can say it almost like it's Batman's version of Die Hard, because he's trapped on the island. Even though he could technically like exit the island anytime he wants, he still stays there to put everybody back into their cells and fix the situation. In the game are present a decent chunk of Batman's most famous villains, which is always nice. Of course, they couldn't fit everybody into the game because time constraints and everything, and also they will have to leave something for the sequels, of course. But the choice they've gone with in the first outing, I think is pretty good. I'm definitely satisfied in that sense. Now let's talk about the gameplay and yeah, and the gameplay. Like I said before, the gameplay is mostly comprised of three elements, which are action, so free flow combat, the fights with the enemies. Which, by the way, this game also was the first outing of the free flow combat, which has also been copied by most other superhero games. See, pretty much the combat system in this game became the standard for superhero video games after this. It's a very simple system, but it works well with huge crowds of enemies. It does suffer when it comes to the one-on-one fights, but when it comes to multiple enemies, it definitely shines. It's also simple because it uses doesn't use many buttons, so everybody can play it even if you don't have a very high dexterity. It uses a singular pushes of buttons, one button to punch, one button to counter, and then other combinations for the gadgets and so on. There are also stealth sections which take advantage of Batman's gadgets, speed and agility, so you can climb, use the bat hook, the batarangs, and so on. Like, the gameplay is simple, but it's also pretty complex and deep, because you can interact with various objects during the course of the game with your gadgets to unlock extra paths, secrets, and so on. So the exploration is definitely a big part of the game, because exploring Arkham Island definitely is gonna be interesting and also take up quite a bit of time. So the game is not just about combat. You can say this is a Metroidvania because you explore the environment, but also you'll have to come back later on with the when you unlock new gadgets to unlock extra secrets that were not accessible before. So that's another aspect that makes the game very good and unique. So, three pillars, like I said: combat, exploration, and stealth. When it comes to the combat itself, it rewards variety, in the sense that the game rewards you with more XP if you vary your moves and combos when you're fighting. So if you use gadgets, if you use special moves, and so on. And also rewards you for keeping the combo going. So the higher the combo you do, the more XP you will get, which is, a nice system that rewards skill. Even though the combat is simple on paper, getting high combos is not easy at all. I can attest to that because I've been spending a lot of time in all the games trying to get high combos in the bigger fights or in the challenges. The stealth also is simple overall, but thanks to the gadgets and the enemy AI, the enemy's AI is not bad at all. Actually, it's actually pretty decent. I don't think they are stupid, honestly, compared to For example, Ubisoft games don't have very good AI. The Arkham games AI is definitely better in my opinion. Of course, it's not perfect, but especially on hard, the enemies will give you a hard time. Especially considering that some rooms are quite hard to deal with, because once the enemies see you, the armed ones, of course, because when you do stealth, you're mostly actually only dealing with the armed enemies. And once they see you, they'll start shooting you, and if you don't have enough health, you'll die very quickly. So even the stealth sections are not easy at all, especially on hard. Like this game is the perfect example of easy to pick up and play, but hard to master. Like I would say, yeah, this motto encapsulates this game's gameplay pretty well. This game is also one of actually the first game, I think, if I remember correctly, that popularized the whole extra vision that lets you see, that lets you like perceive the enemies behind walls and from whenever you are, in the sense that like for example the like in Tomb Raider there was the, at least in the reboot, the survival instincts. Yeah, this is pretty much the same thing. I think this was the first game that implemented this ability in a character. In this game it's called detective vision, which pretty much allows you to see all enemies in the near vicinity and their status and whether they are armed or not. So it's a nice indication on how the enemies are doing, because they will change their behavior depending on their emotional status. And it also helps because some stealth sections without detective vision are quite hard, I have to say. Because if you don't know where some enemies are, it can be hard. So the detective vision definitely makes things easier, but I think in some cases it's kind of mandatory to solve stealth rooms quickly and efficiently. And of course, the detective vision is also useful to spot secret walls, because some walls are actually distractible in this game, but you're not always able to tell them apart. In some cases, it will be slightly harder. So with the detective vision, it does make finding secrets easier. I think it was definitely intended in that sense. So I'm generally not a fan of this kind of ability of being able to see through walls and everything in games, but I actually like it in this game because it makes sense for the character, for Batman to be able to do this, considering all the technology he has at his disposal. Now, you can also upgrade your character with the extra health, extra armor, or powering up your gadgets that you already have unlocked. The more XP you get through combat, or any other activity, like you unlock a secret, you discover a secret, you get XP. You beat an enemy, you get XP, and so on. So it's there's also like a small leveling up system, which is interesting because it adds, it builds on top of the gadgets and the abilities you already have at the beginning of the game. When it comes to the secrets in the game and the side content, in that sense, like unlockables and Easter eggs and so on, probably the biggest exponent in this sense the game has to offer is are the riddles, the Riddler's riddles, which which are a series of trophies, actually the Riddler's trophies, which are a series of trophies that the Riddler will scatter throughout the island. And not just that, it's riddles in the sense that Riddler's trophies, so like pretty much icons, a trophy, like shaped like an interrogation mark. But also, not just that, you can find interrogation tapes from the villains to help you understand more their psychology. But also, there are small Easter eggs scattered throughout the island in the form of riddles. So the riddles will be presented in a way in which a statement prompts you to find a certain object that is hidden inside the island, the levels, the structure you're in. For example, when one of the first riddles that you have to resolve is you have to find a very sharp painting or something like that. And it's pretty much you have to find the painting of the warden of the island, which is called Sharp. His last name is Sharp. So you have to scan that with the detective vision to solve the riddle, the puzzle. And all of this counts towards the completion of the riddles trophies that will grant you, of course, an objective, like an actual trophy in game, like the achievement, 360 achievements and so on. But it also gives you some extra content in the sense that it will resolve the riddles. The Riddler's like storyline, side storyline, and also will give you some more insights in the psychology of some characters, mostly one, but it's still interesting side content. I think this is a good way to make side content. The only problem I have with the riddles, like the Riddler trophies and so on, is that they're a little bit too many of them. Maybe not in Arkham Asylum. In Arkham Asylum, I think they are still manageable. I think there are 224, so not that many. But the problem is, like later on in the series, they really went overboard with this thing. Every game has them. And in the later games, there's way too many of them, considering the map is bigger. But I'm not a fan of too many Riddler's trophies. I prefer them more contained, like more valuable, more contained, instead of just spamming them up with the green like interrogation marks, like in the subsequent games. When it comes to the game's difficulty, it presents just two difficulties: normal and hard. If you're not used to the series, I will say, of course, play on normal. That goes without saying. But if you're already like an expert or you have played like already one or two, I think going with hard is not a bad idea, because it is more challenging, but it's also more rewarding in my opinion, especially in the combat, because in the combat sections you won't have notifications, I mean, warnings when the enemies are about to attack. The exclamation marks or like exclamation lines will not appear over their heads on hard as opposed to normal. And that makes the game definitely harder and more intense, because you actually have to read their movements when they don't have the signal on their head that they're about to attack. It definitely makes the game more engaging. Even though it's a bit more frustrating, because when multiple enemies gang up on you, it's definitely easier, so you have to keep actually harder, I meant. It's definitely harder to counter them, so you have to put distance between you and them on hard for sure, otherwise you won't be able to tell when they're about to attack, or at least not easily. Because I mean, of course the combat got improved in the later games, This one is still good, but if you've played the other games, it does feel a little bit more simplistic. Mostly because there's less gadgets and moves, of course, but also because only one enemy at times can one enemy at a time can attack you. While in the sequels they've made it so that multiple enemies can attack you at once. So you'll have to counter like 1, 2, or 3 times at once, depending on how many enemies attack you. And like I said before, the stealth sections on hard are definitely more interesting because it's very easy to die if the enemies spot you on hard. Of course, their AI is also slightly better. The bosses also are quite hard on hard. The problem with the bosses, though, is that they are, like I said before, the combat system doesn't really is not really built for single boss, like single enemy encounters. So it will suffer a little bit in that sense. The best bosses in the game are definitely the ones where there's the boss and then there's a henchman that attack you as well. But the bosses are not bad per se. They got improved in the later games, but in these games they are serviceable. The only real problem they have is they're a bit repetitive. They lack variety in their attacks, I think. But other than that, they are interesting enough that they don't like. You don't think, oh, the bosses are bad. The bosses are functional, are interesting enough that you will have fun fighting them. But that's it. They are not the best boss you'll ever face in a game like this, for sure. The better bosses come later in the series, I think. Now, to conclude, is the game perfect? No, by any means. It has a few issues. Like I said, the lack of variety when it comes to the bosses. At least we're talking about specifically Arkham Asylum, of course. The bosses are not that great. Lack of variety in that sense. Also, the camera, when there's a lot of enemies on screen, sometimes will have to be readjusted. Because sometimes you just can't see some enemies. So you'll have to rotate the camera yourself. The game doesn't do a good job at following the action sometimes. And also, I would say the combat system can be a bit finicky sometimes, in the sense that the movement is predetermined, so like it's not like you can decide what kind of attack Batman does, in a sense whether he's gonna throw a punch or a kick when you just attack normally. Like when you attack normally, I mean, if you do a special move or any other move that has a specific button, yeah, of course, but punches and kicks, like you just press X, and sometimes he will perform some attacks that will throw you off in terms of distances, because sometimes they will go farther, sometimes a little bit closer, and that can mess you up with the timing of certain moves, because maybe you end up closer to an enemy than you thought, or maybe you end up farther, so it can throw you off. But at least you can decide the direction of the attacks, so that's good. So I mean, in terms of problems, this game doesn't really have problems per se. It's a very good game. I wouldn't have called it a masterpiece otherwise. This definitely it's the kind of game that I can feel comfortable calling it a masterpiece, because it was so good it pretty much spawned a bunch of copycats and set the standard for the superhero genre. So, and even considering what came before and after, especially, because after this, every superhero game was pretty much some kind of clone of Batman Arkham Asylum. So, yeah. But what's your experience with the series? How many have you played? Have you liked them and so on? As usual, let me know your thoughts. And hope you enjoy the video. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye, guys.